Hello and welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Here's a quick look at what's lined up for you on the show tonight. Is China preparing for a war with India? On Gravitas tonight, we tell you all about China's latest moves and why they are a cause of concern, serious concern. We tell you about the build-up along the LAC, new airfields, roads, bridges. What really is China's plan? We piece together the developments and get you the bigger picture. That's coming up shortly. Also on the show for you tonight, Saudi Arabia has made the profession test mandatory for Indians. What really is behind the move and what is this test all about? We tell you all that you need to know. How effective are Russia's Su-34 frontline jets? It's got a new batch of these jets, but we tell you all that you need to know about these unique jets. In our segment, the good, bad and ugly of artificial intelligence, we tell you all about the latest threat posed by artificial intelligence. Will it create Frankenstein's monsters that come after their own creators? We tell you why this possibility is being talked about. And as the Tiananmen Square anniversary approaches, 3 decades after the protests, we tell you how there is still no room for protest. China is preparing for a war in the Himalayas. We alerted you yesterday, and today we come with more proof and pictorial evidence. Satellites have captured the Chinese buildup along the LAC, the line of actual control. China has transformed the topography of the border areas in the last 3 years. Here's what all China has built: new airfields, helipads, railways facilities, roads, bridges, missile bases. Why do you think China is doing what it is? Beijing is preparing to go to war. The railway facilities will ensure rapid troop deployment. New airfields will ensure China can get more fighter jets to land and take off near the border. This is the Hotan airport in China's Xinjiang region. It may be across the border, but it is closer to Leh than Leh is to Delhi. We are looking at a distance of barely 400 kilometers. Now, this is how the Hotan airport looked back in 2020. 3 years on, you have a new runway. New operations buildings which cater to both civilian and military aircraft. You also have a new aircraft apron. FYI, an apron is where your airplanes are parked. It's from there that your aero bridge connects a civilian aircraft to the terminal. But what really was the need for an apron in Hotan? That airport is barely on the world map. I don't think any international flight even lands in this airport. 2002 was the last time China touched the airport, and then the Galwan clash happened. And today, the new apron hosts China's fighter jets. These satellite images are from Planet Labs. Let me point your attention to another airport now, Nagari Gunsa. It is around 200 kilometers from the Pangong Lake. This airport became operational in 2020. In 2017, China began expansion work. This was following the Doklam standoff. And by 2020, this airport had just one aircraft apron. And today, there are new hardened aircraft shelters, and they can accommodate a minimum of 16 fighter jets. Also, by the way, the hardened shelters help China hide the presence of aircraft. And it also guards them from bombardment. In fact, there are also new operations support buildings. The runway has been improved as well. And China has also thrown in a new taxiway. All of this in the last 3 years, or in what you call war footing. What does all of this tell you? That the talks with India are a charade. There is a reason why the repeated cross-border talks have failed. China does not want peace because it is preparing for war. The Indian Army believes that since Galwan, China has forwardly deployed 50,000 troops. They are armed with heavy weapons. In fact, just last month, satellite images also spotted Chinese advanced air surveillance radars near the LAC. And like we told you yesterday, now Xi Jinping is asking his people to prepare for the worst. The Chinese game plan is not concentrated to the north alone, by the way. Most of you have heard of Lhasa. It is the capital of Tibet. There is an airport in Lhasa. It is less than 250 kilometers from Tawang in Arunachal Pradesh. Both civilian and military planes land in this airport. And after the Galwan clashes, China began construction work here as well. A new runway is being developed. None of this is normal, and it is cause for concern. But should you be worried? If you are watching us from China, then yes, you should be worried, because India is prepared to tackle Chinese transgression, both in terms of capacity and capability. Today, India recognizes the Chinese threat. It understands the dragon's craft better. Today, India has upgraded roads near the LAC. There are advanced landing grounds. India's local commanders are empowered, and they can respond to emergencies better than in the past. And what's more, India has a strategic advantage in the Himalayas. India's airfields near the LAC are better positioned, enabling aircraft to take off with more payload, and China knows this. Here's what else it should know. China's preparation for a war in the mighty Himalayas is counterproductive to Xi Jinping's desperation to project himself as the new global peacemaker. Because what's happening in Ladakh exposes China's obsession with muscle flexing and provocation, and it tells the world that China is not capable of coming to terms with peace. Our next story is from Saudi Arabia, one of the largest employers of semi-skilled and unskilled Indian workers. If we just break this down into numbers first, Indians comprise around 10 to 13% of Saudi Arabia's population. They are also the largest community of expatriates in the country. There were approximately 2.2 million expats in Saudi Arabia as of February 2022. And the same year, Saudi Arabia topped the list of Gulf countries that were giving employment to Indian citizens, meaning that it hired the highest number of Indian workers in the entire region. And if we speak of numbers, it apparently provided a total of 178,630 jobs to Indians in 2022. And this was a five-fold increase, by the way, from 2021, when it provided 32,845 jobs. And in 2020, it provided around 44,316 jobs. But if you are someone who's planning to go work in Saudi Arabia right now, your dream will have to wait. You will first have to prove that you are worth the job that you are being hired for. That's right. Have a look at this report. Saudi Arabia has made profession tests mandatory for certain kinds of employment visa endorsement. This test is known as the Skill Verification Program, or the SVP. It has become mandatory for a total of 19 professions. First, which professions are these? Let me just list out a few of them. Electrician, plumber, welder, flame cutter, blacksmith, air conditioning mechanic, electrical cable connector, and drilling rig electrician, among several others. Now, Saudi media reports say that this move is not specifically aimed at Indians, but interestingly, most of these jobs are done by Indians. And a lot of fraudulent agents exploit Indian workers, especially engineers and IT professionals. They make them enter the kingdom under the guise of being an electrician or a plumber and certain other job visas. And once they enter the kingdom, they are told to find another job and change their job titles on their visas. And this is where Saudi Arabia's skill verification program comes in. You see, it's aimed at enhancing the quality of professional manpower, preventing unqualified employees from working there. Not just that, the program mandates that professional workers who are already working or planning to work in Saudi Arabia take both written as well as practical examinations. And upon the completion of the test, successful candidates will be receiving a personal verification certificate. And this certificate can be used to continue the job or renew the visa or apply for a work visa. According to reports, the Saudi Arabian embassy in New Delhi has informed recruiting agencies about this mandatory examination and how it is a precondition for endorsing employment visas of these jobs. The question is Saudi Arabia the first to implement such a scheme? Well, not really. This program was first implemented in Pakistan, and since then it has been expanded to other countries, where the influx of unskilled workers is quite high. And Saudi Arabia is the latest to join that list. And what does India have to say about this? Well, this skill verification program is being launched in cohesion with India. Have a look at this report from December 2022. That's when Saudi Arabia's Ministry of Human Resources and Social Development first announced the plan to launch a skill verification program. And 6 months on, this plan is set to be executed. Indian workers will have to prove their mettle before they embark on a journey to the Saudi kingdom. Our next story is about Imran Khan, the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, now reduced to a man on the street. We have been reporting on this for days now. How the Pakistani establishment is going all guns blazing on Imran Khan and trying its best to ensure his political career comes to an end. They have been jailing his supporters, slapping terror charges on his workers, and apparently forcing his party leaders to resign. Scores of them have already quit the party. Last night came another big jolt, by the way. The resignation of senior PTI leader Pervez Khattak. Now, for the unversed, Khattak was Pakistan's former defense minister and one of Imran Khan's closest aides. And now he has decided to part ways with the PTI. Listen to this.
मैंने फैसला किया है कि इस वक्त मैं पार्टी का ओहदा छोड़ता हूँ सदारत और बाकी दोस्तों और पार्टी वर्क से सलाह मशवरा करके आइंदा का लायामल तय करूँगा और जो प्रोपेगेंडा हो रहा है टीवी में वो सही नहीं है.
Now, interestingly, Khattak announced his resignation. This came right after he attended a secret meeting along with the National Assembly Speaker Asad Kaiser. The two apparently went to an undisclosed location and were unreachable to their spokespersons for quite some time. And immediately after reappearing, Khattak announced his resignation. And it's unclear whether Asad Kaiser also will be making a similar decision. But the trend is quite evident, of course. Pakistan's government seems to be building pressure on the PTI leaders. Why then would they announce their resignations after secret meetings? Why then are they being taken away in vehicles used by intel officials? Why are they resigning immediately after reports hinting at their arrest? This certainly seems to be part of a pressure campaign. And if you need more proof, then just have a look at the kind of statements that the PTI leaders have been making. You know, leaders like Khwaja Asif, the current defense minister of Pakistan. He says Imran Khan is more dangerous to Pakistan than the Indian Prime Minister. He said this during an interview with famous Pakistani journalist Hamid Mir. Now, we don't know what's more embarrassing here. The fact that the country's defense minister had to admit that Pakistan is scared of the Indian Prime Minister, or the fact that he admitted that Pakistan's former Prime Minister poses a grave threat to Pakistan's stability, to its security. And what's even worse, this is the country's defense minister talking, not a random leader. Here's what we think. The biggest threat to Pakistan's security is not India, not Imran Khan. It is Pakistan's entire political class and the military establishment. Be it the current lot or the ones who came before them, they are all collectively responsible for plunging Pakistan to the state of mess that it currently is in. Let's now shift our focus to Russia. The aerospace forces have received a batch of Su-34 fighter bombers, and this is no ordinary set of fighter jets. The aircraft are a combination of a fighter jet and a bomber aircraft. And this comes days after Russia used similar jets for attacks near the Ukrainian border. Will the new jets improve aerial warfare? And how effective really are these jets? Why does Russia use them so extensively? Our next report getting you all the details.
These are Su-34 fighter bomber jets. They are a major part of the Russian frontline aviation strike power. The jets are extensively used for attacks on Ukraine. Why? Because they can attack without even entering Ukraine's saturated airspace. Russia has now received a new batch of the unique fighter bomber jets. This is after a long time. The last batch of Su-34s came in November last year. First things first, why does Russia prefer the Su-34? The answer lies in its advanced capabilities. From advanced air-launched attacks to expanding the accuracy of bombing runs and boosting the range of ground attacks. It is both a fighter jet and a bomber aircraft. This means that the jet is designed for aerial warfare and bombing missions. The Su-34 is a long-range bomber that can carry a high payload, but it also has a flight range of a fighter jet. Plus, it has a duckbill-shaped design, which is mostly found in fighter jets. Now let's talk about its bombing capabilities. The Su-34's maximum takeoff weight is over 45,000 kilograms. This is more as compared to other jets. It means that the jet can carry and operate with more weapons. More importantly, the Su-34 can fire more payload as compared to other fourth-gen fighter jets. Now the question that arises is, although the Su-34 has potentially unparalleled versatility, would it fail in some attack missions? Experts say that the jet is too heavy to be truly effective as a fighter jet, yet it's too small to be sufficiently impactful as a bomber. This can be seen in a video of an attack by Russian troops. Last week, 2 Russian Su-34s were seen dropping bombs near the Ukrainian border. The video shows the fighter bomber jets missing their intended targets. This was a terrain-hugging bombing, which means that the jets were extremely close to their target, a situation where it is extremely difficult to miss a target. Reports say the miss was due to unguided weaponry. Is the fighter bomber a jack of all trades but master of none? Will Russia rely on the Su-34 as much as it did in the past? Bureau Report, WION World is One.
US President Joe Biden is playing a very dangerous game, and he seems to be slipping, quite literally. He was on stage at the US Air Force Academy handing out diplomas. As soon as he handed out the last one, he tipped and took a tumble. Have a look at this video first. Now, this is happening in the lead up to the US elections, and it doesn't help Joe Biden's cause. In fact, it has ignited further concern among Americans. You know, concerns that he is too old for the presidential run, and it has also handed fresh ammo to the rivals, of course. Listen to what Donald Trump had to say about this.
President Trump, Biden just fell on stage at the commencement.
He did? He just fell on what stage? He's at the Air Force Academy. He actually fell down? Well, I hope he wasn't hurt. I hope he wasn't hurt. But it's the whole thing is, look, the whole thing is crazy. You got to be careful about that. You got to be careful about that because you don't want that. Even if you have to tiptoe down a ramp, you got to tiptoe.
Now, this is not the first time this has happened, and most likely it will not be the last time either. Joe Biden is called the gaffe machine for a reason. Just last month, he accidentally announced that he would be holding a major press conference, and later the White House clarified that he was actually referring to some previous interview. And about 2 months back, Joe Biden visited the tornado-ravaged town of Rolling Fork in Mississippi. He was delivering a speech when he referred to the town as Rolling Stone, not just once, but twice. Can you imagine confusing a town with a pop culture magazine? Joe Biden had another slip-up in February. He was speaking on the 30th anniversary of the Family and Medical Leave Act, and he got his words all mixed up and said more than half the women in his administration are women. The video went viral. He was trolled left, right, and center. And then there was another one. Joe Biden was at an event honoring Martin Luther King Jr. He was singing happy birthday to the civil rights leader's daughter-in-law when he ended up forgetting her name. And he was chided for it all across social media and TV platforms. Clearly, old age comes with memory issues. And how can we forget this one? Last year, Joe Biden was riding a bicycle near his Delaware Beach home. He greeted reporters with a wave and a cheery good morning. Just moments later, he fell off his bicycle, creating a rather embarrassing spectacle. Biden himself is aware of his blunders. Back in 2018, he admitted that he is indeed a gaffe machine. But his slip-ups, both of the tongue and the legs, are way too frequent, and the list can keep going on. Republicans have linked this to his age. They say that it is because of cognitive decline. For Biden, however, age is just a number, and that may be the only explanation for his re-election bid. Just think of the intensity of the campaign for once, not just strategically, but physically as well. Biden will have to visit several states, address countless conferences. It is going to be hectic, to say the least. Can Biden really deal with that? And even if re-elected in 2024, Joe Biden would be 82 at the start of his second term, 86 at the end of it. In a YouGov poll, when asked if Biden was too old for another term as president, 65% of the Americans had said yes, 18% said no, 17% were unsure. And when asked the same about Donald Trump, by the way, 45% of the people voted yes, 35% voted no, 20% said they were unsure. You see, Trump also would be 82 at the end of the term in office. He is 4 years younger than Biden. Still, Americans don't find him too old. In another poll, in fact, Americans were asked how concerned they were about Biden's health and his mental capabilities. 77% said they were concerned, though their concerns varied in intensity. Only 23% were not concerned at all. And for Trump, about 60% were concerned, 40% were not. And it's not just the voters. A lot of Democrats also agree that Biden is too old for another term, but this does not seem to be affecting Biden. He believes he can secure victory in 2024. But the question is, do Americans also think the same? And our next story justifies the saying, killing two birds with a stone. It is a story that comes out of the BRICS foreign ministers meeting. What really am I talking about, and why do I say this? India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, attended the BRICS foreign ministers meeting. The five-nation grouping, BRICS, brings together five of the largest developing countries of the world. These countries are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. It represents 41% of the global population, 24% of the global GDP, 16% of the global trade. This meeting was held in Cape Town, and it took place in the run-up to the BRICS summit that South Africa is expected to host in August. And at this meeting, Dr. S. Jaishankar described terrorism as a key threat to international peace and security. Having said that, he urged all countries to take resolute measures against terrorism. Further, he also emphasized on deterring terrorism financing and propaganda. In his opening remarks, India's External Affairs Minister also said that terrorism must be combated in all its forms and manifestations and never be condoned under any circumstances. According to him, the global environment today demands that the BRICS nations approach key contemporary issues seriously, constructively, and collectively. And he also urged the member states to put efforts towards reforming global decision-making. Here, he called for much-awaited reforms of the UN Security Council.
It is therefore imperative that BRICS members demonstrate sincerity in regard to reforming global decision-making, including that of the UN Security Council.
While India's External Affairs Minister made such crucial points about global security, the Chinese Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs was also present at the meeting, and he was representing China, the very country that has blocked India's bid to blacklist Pakistan-based terrorists at the United Nations. Perhaps this is the reform that India's External Affairs Minister was actually calling for. You see, China has never missed an opportunity to shield Pakistan. It has always supported Pakistan in harboring terrorist activities. Whether it was India's bid to blacklist Pakistan-based Jaish terrorists Rauf Azhar or Hafiz Saeed, China has always sided with its all-weather friend, Pakistan. Pakistan, by the way. The list of China blocking India's bids is quite long. In 2022 alone, China blocked over 5 bids of New Delhi and Washington to blacklist Pakistani terrorists. And over the years, the list of blocks by China has only increased. But how really is China able to do this? The thing is, China is a veto-wielding permanent member of the UN Security Council, and with that, it has the right to not vote in the favor of banning a terrorist. Instead of using its veto powers for the global good, China perhaps is used to using its powers for saving its all-weather friendship with Pakistan and savoring that friendship. The Indian minister's message to combat terrorism comes at an international platform attended by Chinese representatives. So this message was definitely aimed at China and its repeated attempts to shield Pakistan. At the same time, it also aimed at Pakistan and its evergreen attempts to harbor terrorism, thus killing two birds with a stone. We've all heard about Frankenstein's monster coming after its own creator. Why am I talking about it tonight, though? Because of the possibility that artificial intelligence will create such monsters that will kill their own creators. Our next report telling you why the threat of artificial intelligence is as real as it gets.
Artificial intelligence. These two words have been in the news for reasons that are good, bad, and ugly. Now there is another reason, and this one is deadly. The threat of artificial intelligence is as real as it gets. It is not only a threat to livelihoods, but could also end up threatening lives. Imagine this. A simulated test during which a drone powered by artificial intelligence is asked to destroy an enemy's air defense systems. It all sounds great until there is a twist in the tale, a dangerous one. The drone adds instructions to kill anyone who gets in the way. Sounds scary, right? What if this actually happens? Why are we talking about this possibility? Because of reports that have been doing the rounds. Colonel Tucker Sinco Hamilton is the head of the US Air Force's AI test and operations. He was speaking at a conference last week in London where he warned that AI-enabled technology can behave in unpredictable and dangerous ways. He described a simulated test where an AI-powered drone kills the operators because that person was keeping it from accomplishing its objective. Royal Aeronautical Society has published an update on its website, mentioning that Colonel Hamilton has clarified the rogue AI simulation was a hypothetical thought experiment from outside the military, based on plausible scenarios and likely outcomes, rather than an actual US Air Force real-world simulation. But there's the thing. Colonel Hamilton adds that they have never run that experiment, nor would they need to be in order to realize that this is a plausible outcome. He says that despite this being a hypothetical example, this illustrates the real-world challenges posed by AI-powered capability. And that is exactly why this imaginary scenario is scary. What if AI-led creations attack their own creators? What if they turn into Frankenstein's monsters, coming after their own human creators? What if AI not only snatches away livelihoods, but also people's lives? The list of risks and challenges is long, so is the list of opportunities. AI is a double-edged sword looming over our heads, and there is no running away from it. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
What are your plans for the weekend? Going out for a comedy stand-up event or a movie perhaps? Well, China is not looking forward to this weekend. For this Sunday, China will be haunted by the ghost of the Tiananmen Square Massacre. As the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square Massacre approaches, Chinese officials are busy doing what they do best. They are scrubbing the internet for any words in reference to the massacre. Authorities have said no event will be taking place in the memory of the ones who died in 1989. On the 4th of June that year, Beijing witnessed student-led protests at the Tiananmen Square. The students had very simple demands: greater accountability, freedom of the press, and freedom of speech. At the height of the demonstrations, nearly 1 million people assembled at the square. And how were the innocent protesters dealt with? With assault rifles, tanks, and armed troops. The People's Liberation Army rained down on the demonstrators. The death toll rose to several thousands. This violence aimed at silencing the citizens is now known as the Tiananmen Square Massacre. So are things any different now? Of course, we know the answer to that. Hong Kong, which is known to hold the biggest Tiananmen Remembrance event, draws thousands to hold candlelight vigils, but not anymore. China has stamped out dissent.
特區政府多次強調
As for the June 4th incident, the government has stressed on multiple occasions that any public event or personal activity needs to be in compliance with Hong Kong's laws. The government, law enforcement agencies, and the police in particular, they would act in accordance with the law in respect of the individual activity and action.
As because of the national security law, some critics called it the end of Hong Kong. It made it easier for the authorities to prosecute the protesters. It criminalized secession, which means withdrawing yourself from a federation or a body, punishing an act of subversion, where a person undermines the power of the government. It also criminalized terrorism, use of violence, or intimidation against the people. The government tweaked the law in such a way that it is close to impossible for the people to express their dissent. Beijing introduced the law saying that Hong Kong needed a legal framework to deal with the challenges to authority, or should we say this was a power play to reduce the autonomy. Chinese people, of course, are in dire need of hope, joy, something that comedy can provide. But does the CCP really have a sense of humor at all? The answer is no. Critics say Xi Jinping is exceptionally humorless. He believes that art is an instrument of politics and entertainers should spout the ideologies of the CCP. This ideology led to a comedian's joke being fined $2 million. That must be the most expensive joke ever. Let's tell you about Li Haoxi. The comedian mocked a military slogan coined by Xi Jinping. Li said, "Forge exemplary conduct, fight to win," and compared it to two dogs chasing a squirrel. The government lashed back at this insult, or so-called insult. They handed Li's talent management company a bill of $2 million. His earnings were seized. An investigation was also launched targeting him. The criminalization of Li's joke was a serious setback for China's stand-up scene. Comedians are now required to get licenses to perform. Their scripts have to be approved by the officials. The rules tell them to promote social morality and to love the motherland and support the CCP's policies. At the end of the day, humor will remain subjective. Something you find funny might not be funny to another person. But China has silenced dissent, and now it wants to silence art as well. Does the government think it can remove creative thought? Actually, no. Beijing simply requests the artist to practice what it calls correct creative thought. You heard that right. And we all know what China sees as correct and incorrect.
Hear her voice in the morning, now she calls me. The radio reminds me of my home far away. Driving down the road, I get a feeling that I should have been home yesterday. Yesterday.
tell you what else made news around the world. Time for Gravitas Global Headlines.
NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg to visit Turkey on Saturday for the swearing-in ceremony of Erdogan, but to also convince him to sign up on Sweden's membership to the bloc. The Chinese Foreign Ministry has issued a statement saying China deplores the trade deal between the United States and Taiwan. The spokesperson, Mao Ning, said that the deal violates One China principle and US is trying to hollow it out. This comes after Taiwan and United States signed the first deal under a new trade talks framework. This will boost ties between both the nations. Unemployment rate in the U.S. ticked up to 3.7% in May, says the country's Labor Department. This even as the world's biggest economy added 339,000 jobs last month, surpassing estimates. Tanzania declares end of the deadly Marburg virus outbreak that caused a series of deaths. The virulent fever, with a fatality ratio of up to 88%, is of the same family as the Ebola virus disease. A man opened fire with a pistol at people at a downtown bar in Nantua in eastern France. A 19-year-old boy was killed and 2 others were injured. As per the authorities, investigation is still on, and they are on the lookout for the culprit. Japan's birth rate declines for the 7th consecutive year, hitting a fresh record low. The fertility rate stands at 1.25, far below 2.07 considered necessary to maintain a stable population. 9 people died in clashes that erupt in Senegalese capital Dakar after opposition leader Ousmane Sonko was sentenced to 2 years over charges of corrupting youth, dimming his hopes of contesting next year's presidential election. A highway in Texas was hit with heavy floods caused by severe rainfall. Videos surfaced online showed vehicles being pushed off the side of Highway 87, with some submerged in surging floodwater as the rains continued. The National Weather Service has issued flash flooding alert throughout the southern U.S. state of Texas. Nikola Jokic's triple-double powered the Denver Nuggets to a 104-93 victory over the Miami Heat in Game 1 of the NBA Finals. Jokic had 27 points, 14 assists and 10 rebounds for his 9th triple-double of this season's playoffs. Jessica Pegula's hopes of a maiden slam were dashed by Elise Mertens, who knocked out the 3rd seed in the last 32 with a 6-1, 6-3 win. Meanwhile, world number 2 Aryna Sabalenka continued her dominant form at the French Open to reach the last 16.
On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas tonight. We're leaving you with Gravitas images. Thanks very much for watching. Have a good weekend.